and speak on the fundamentals or the roots of Buddhist psychology. There's a particular purpose to the teachings of Buddhist psychology, or the psychology of the mind and heart. It is not a philosophy, and it's not a religion or a set of beliefs. But rather, the Buddha said, just as the four great oceans have but one taste, the taste of salt, so do all the teachings of the Dharma have one taste, one purpose, which is the taste of freedom, to bring an inner liberation or awakening to beings. So that Buddhist psychology, not being a philosophy, offers instead some practical ways to understand the heart and the mind and the body and life that can lead us to a genuine and unshakable happiness. This happiness is not a destination. It's not some place you get to and say, I've got it, now I'm happy. But rather, this happiness is a spirit with which we travel through or open to this changing world. It's like the cartoon I saw in the newspaper of these traveling Middle Easterners on camels. The father was in the first camel and the mother in the second with all their baggage and so forth. And in the third camel were several children. And the father was turning back, talking to the children, saying, "Stop asking me if we're almost there. We're nomads, for crying out loud." So the idea isn't somehow some state or something that we get, but rather what is the truth or understanding that lets us move through the changing world that is the nature of life. We begin this Buddhist psychology by looking clearly and asking some difficult questions. The difficult questions begin to examine the culture and life that we live in. And as one of my teachers said, it's a bit like swimming upstream, because the teachings or what we discover may be in quite a different direction than the common values. In Buddhist psychology, we begin to study the roots of action, those that are unconscious and unskillful, the kind of conditioning and habits and strategies that create a loss of flexibility and congeal us and create pain. And then we discover the possibility in those of awakening, of freedom, of moving beyond them. As we start to meditate, which is the practice of a heartfelt attention or mindfulness, we can begin to experience what makes up this world, the direct experience, the suchness of it. What is the world, the Buddha asks in the beginning of Buddhist psychology? The raw materials are sights, sounds, smells, tastes, physical perceptions, and mental perceptions. Anybody have any other raw materials of their life? Raise your hand, please. I'd like to know. 6 colors in the palette of experience. So as we begin to examine really what is the experience of being alive, there are these 6 sense experiences. The eye with sight, the ear with sounds, the nose with smells, the tongue with taste, and so forth. The mind with feelings and intuitions and thoughts, the body with perceptions. That's what makes up our world. Now it's said in Buddhist psychology, and you can examine this, that there are also 6 kinds of consciousness that arise together with the 6 sense experiences. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousness. And this word consciousness means the knowing quality. So there's a sight and the knowing of it. and a sound and the knowing of it. Smell or taste or perception and the knowing of it. Okay? 6 experiences, 6 kinds of consciousness or flavors. Then the third element in Buddhist psychology is what is called mental qualities. And these are elucidated as several key or root qualities that are common, and then a variety of optional qualities. And all these mental qualities, or sometimes they're called mental factors, arise in a moment of experience and determine our relationship to it. So there's a sight and the knowing of it. And the common mental qualities are feeling and contact and recognition and steadiness, just some appreciation of what's there, a kind of knowing of it. But then there are 3 unskillful or painful roots that can arise in a moment of sight or sound or taste or smell. And these roots are based on a small sense of self, on what's called the body of fear. And they are the roots of grasping or greed, holding on, or aversion, of pushing away, not wanting that sight or sound or taste or smell, hatred, or delusion, kind of not seeing clearly, ignorance, confusion. And out of grasping or aversion and anger, pushing away experience, or delusion, not seeing it, there then arise restlessness, attachment, jealousy, worry, fear, hate, doubt, shamelessness, duplicity, a whole host of other qualities that come out of our fear or our grasping for a particular sight or sound or taste or smell or experience. The 3 roots give rise to these others. These become habits, if you will. They have opposites in what are called the wise or skillful or open relationship to the sights and sounds and feelings of our experience. So instead of grasping or greed, hatred, and delusion, there's love. Sights and sounds, experiences come, and love arises instead of hatred, or wisdom arises instead of delusion and ignorance. Or openness arises instead of grasping. And out of love and clarity and openness arise together with them spontaneously joy, integrity, adaptability, lightness, confidence, equanimity, goodwill, a whole host of qualities. So the spiritual trainings, which there are many, many hundreds of practices in the Buddhist tradition, sense this range of possibilities and offer the direct experience of training the heart and mind to move from fear or grasping or entanglement or confusion to a natural openness, beyond the small sense of self, beyond this structure of fear, to another possibility. Now, as we pay attention with the mindfulness in each moment of experience, sensing, hearing, feeling, whatever arises, we can notice that there's a recognition, oh, I know what this is. It's a car or a bird or the color yellow. There's a feeling tone, pleasant or unpleasant, to the sound or sight or smell and so forth. And then there comes a whole host of responses. You know how that happens. So as we observe or pay attention, we can notice how we respond, what the habits of responses are. Is it clarity, or fear, or wisdom, or love, or grasping? Notice what our habits are in all the changing experiences that arise. And then where do those habits lead us? When we react with grasping, or aversion, or irritation, where does that lead us? When there's a reaction of openness, or equanimity and balance, or love, where does that lead us? This is not at all meant to be moralistic. You can do whatever you do, but simply a helpful way to look at the very structure and patterns of mind itself. A traveler nearing a great city asked a woman seated by the wayside, "Mother, what are the people like in this city ahead?" "How were the people where you came from?" "A terrible lot," the traveler responded. "Mean, untrustworthy, detestable in all respects." "Ah," said the woman, "you will find them the same in the city ahead." Scarcely was the first traveler gone when another one stopped and also inquired about the people in the great city before him. Again the old woman asked about the people in the place the traveler had left. "Oh, they were fine people, honest, industrious, generous to a fault. I was sorry to leave," declared the second traveler. Responded the wise woman, "So you will find them in the city ahead." Somebody asked the Lama Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, in Buddhism, if there's no fixed sense of self, but we're always changing, dynamic, then what exactly is it that's reborn? And he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, it's your bad habits." Right? So, a repeated unwise response, clinging, paranoia, aggression, to avoid the pains or the things of loss or insecurity, to try to be happy, we grasp, we push away, we try to find security, then gradually becomes our way, an identity. But it is a false identity. And in Buddhist psychology, after noticing that there are these 6 senses, and becoming aware of how we respond to the senses, we begin to notice the habits or personality structures that arise out of our own personal wounds and history and pain and fear, seeking security, and the ways that they then manifest worldwide to create conflict and war and racism and so forth that prevent our opening. Mind is the forerunner, the ground, or the heart is that which really creates our life in the world. If there is righteousness in the heart, says Confucius, there will be beauty in the character. And if there's beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. And if there's harmony in the home, there will be order in the nations. And if there is order in the nations, there will be peace in the world. Directly connected. Now, if we begin to look, the classical description of the ways that we get entangled or lost are the personality structures that are based on the roots of either grasping because we don't have enough, or pushing away, aversion and aggression because we don't want anymore, or delusion of going to sleep, not knowing, not seeing clearly. And out of each, there can become habit patterns. So greed is one of them. That's the if-only quality. If only I had more. More whatever it is, more money, more time, more people who love me, more delicious food, more great sex, more sensual experiences, more time in the mountains, more time in the city. If only I had this and that, something that's not here, then I would be happy. And so there's a kind of accumulation mentality for pleasure or security or whatever. And the habit of it is this wanting inside doesn't end because we get something and we're satisfied for a little bit. And then what happens, have you noticed? Then wanting comes and says, well, that's good, how about this? Maybe if we get that and then that too, and that, then we'll be happy. I said to this wanting creature inside me, this is from Kabir, do you believe there is some other place that will make the soul less thirsty? In that great absence you will find nothing. What we seek is here already. Be strong then and enter into your own body. There you have a solid place for your feet. Kabir says this, just throw away all thoughts of imaginary things and stand firm in that which you are. So the grasping quality, when it becomes the habit, this wanting mind. This type enters the room and they look around and they see what they want. You know, that's interesting. I like those books over there. That's a nice tanka, beautiful painting. Or there's an interesting person. I'd like to get to know them better. And so they're always looking for something more. And then the description of this, I need, I want more, the clinging. It said not only do you enter the room that way, but the way such a person eats is delicately and gently, the kind of sensualist, savoring everything. And they walk lightly and they dance elegantly, and everything has got to be a certain way. So that's one quality. And it's always looking for something else. Then the second root, because you know what happens out of grasping, don't you? Yeah, accumulation and then fear of loss. When we want, we're never happy where we are, because it's never enough. The aversion type is a little easier to understand the suffering, because anger, aggression, fear, and judgment are painful inherently. In the grasping, you kind of get it, and then you realize it didn't work. But in the aversion type, they enter the room, and instead of seeing what's beautiful, they see what's wrong with it. Where the greed type kind of sees what's possible to get, the aversion type judges everything, or most everything. And they're equally powerful forces. I mean, the force of greed runs a lot of the world. The force of hatred runs much of the rest of it. Basically, says Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, hell seems to be related with unlimited or unbridled aggression. Aggression that is based on such perpetual hatred that you begin to lose the point. You are uncertain as to whom you are building your aggression toward, or by whom your aggression is being built up. There's that continual process of uncertainty and confusion. Not only that, but you begin to build up a whole environment of aggression around you. So the greed type wakes up and says, oh, thank God, another day, you know, how beautiful. And the aversion type wakes up and says, good God, another day, you know, I have to live through this. Critical, hasty. The way they eat is also, it's said, critical, hasty, you know, not right. And even the description of how that personality type walks quickly and kind of, you know, trying to get through something rather than enjoy it. The deluded type, when they walk in the room, instead of seeing what they want or what they don't like, they look around and say, what am I doing here? What is this place? What's going on? You know, confusion and doubt arise. This quality, Rumi in his poem speaks to. You've lost your camel, my friend, and everyone is giving you advice. You don't know where your camel is, but you do sense these casual directions are wrong. Even someone who hasn't lost a camel, who's never even owned a camel, gets in on the excitement. Yes, I've lost my camel too, a big reward for whoever finds it. Confusion on top of confusion. And there, you know, where the greed type eats with this sensual, oh, I want more, I want to milk the sensations, the flavors, and the aversion type sees it wasn't cooked quite right to their taste. The deluded type doesn't really notice, they just eat and it drips down a little bit over them, right? And as they walk, it says they kind of drag their feet and bump into things and so forth. And of course you can see we have all of these in us, but you can feel in this description the kind of habits that grow. Small ones that then can get really huge. But each of these can be transformed into love, into wisdom, into openness. It's possible to open all of these, from grasping to openness and generosity, from hatred to forgiveness and compassion, from delusion to clarity. But first, we need to examine how the unwise states arise. Life is a stream of changing experience, gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. arise and pass with the sights and sounds, over and over changing. It's never the same. Gain and loss, praise and blame, blame and praise, pleasure and pain, pain and pleasure. They change like the seasons, like the waves of the ocean. All the unskillful strategies of grasping at what's pleasant, or hating what's unpleasant, or being deluded and ignoring what's neutral and what's not so clear, all the unskillful strategies of fear and contraction and agitation are ways that we have learned to try to protect ourselves, to try to be safe or happy, to hold on or resist. You know, we're trying to do the best we can, but they're not always wise. All Buddhists point to another possibility, that this small sense of self that we try to protect and tell stories about and do all these manipulations about is not who we really are. It is not our true nature. And when we rest in our Buddha nature, there arises a presence and a freedom in the face of all the changing circumstances, pleasure and pain and gain and loss and birth and death. Because for most of us, we fear death as being the worst, right? And if you can be in the face of that, why not everything else? It is like this passage from Viktor Frankl that I've quoted many times, where he says, "We who lived in the concentration camps can remember those who walked through the huts comforting others and giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they attest to the last and final freedom of all human beings, the freedom to choose one's spirit in the face of any circumstances." That's the real freedom, the freedom of heart. So in Buddhist psychology, we study our experience and our habits and begin to examine very directly, moment by moment, what keeps us believing in this small sense of self and what the habits based on it arise and what else might be true. So let's take the first unwise strategy of greed or grasping. In the Dhammapada, the verses of the Buddha, it says, "If you are filled with grasping, your sorrows swell like the grass after the rain." The more grasping, the more sorrows. "But if you release your wants, your sorrows fall from you like drops of water from a lotus petal and a lotus flower." Grasping is sometimes like the golden chain. It seems like, oh, we get this and then we get that and it'll all be better as we have more. And then you have more and more and you have to worry about more and more. And if you're grasping at it especially. So we need to look at how often wanting arises and rules our life. Because when we're really wanting what's not here, we can't see clearly. The truth appears to eyes unclouded by longing, says the Tao. And so this is the unskillful grasping, attachment, fears, having and getting and wanting. And accumulation becomes our identity, whether it's people or money or sex or things or power. And we just do it over and over. Does that bring us happiness or freedom is the question. We begin to look. Do you remember the story that on You Bet Your Life, Groucho Marx, one time they had on the show Mr. and Mrs. Walker because they had 22 children that she had had, which is quite a feat, you might say. So there was Mr. and Mrs. Walker and their whole brood of children, and Groucho's there, you know, and looking at them and saying, finally he said, "Well, how did this happen to Mrs. Walker?" Mrs. Walker said, "I love my husband." And Groucho looked at her and said, "Well, I love my cigar too, but I take it out sometimes." So you begin to study wanting. The moment wanting and grasping comes, the wanting, you're sitting and you want the bell to ring. Do you know that wanting? And there's this amazing thing, you're sitting and you want the bell to ring and you're uncomfortable and restless and you can't wait till the end and you want the bell to ring, and then it goes, and all of a sudden you're happy, right? It's true. Well, wait. Stay with me for a second. So the bell rings and you feel happy and nothing has changed. You haven't moved. The circumstances aren't different, right? You're just there and the bell rang. Why are you happy when the bell rings? Because you're no longer wanting. The minute the bell rings, you go, ah. And in that moment of not wanting, oh, there's this incredible openness that arises. So you begin to notice the wanting at the end of the sitting for the bell to ring, and what happens when it stops, or the wanting of the pain to go away, or the pleasant thoughts that you want to have, or whatever it is. And you begin to study this, the addiction or the need, the kind of feeding the inner hungry ghosts. I remember seeing the cartoon that came out of Mad magazine, and there was Alfred E. Newman, at the school blackboard writing 100 times over and over, cessation of desire, again and again. But it's not that simple, let's let go, because the longing covers for many of us very deep wounds. Nourishment we didn't get, insecurity, grief, a hole in our heart or our gut or our body somehow or other. And it's important to understand we're not saying to ignore that or not to honor it, and certainly not to suppress it. Sometimes it needs to be fulfilled in some way. We have a deep need for healing and needs to be respected, for love, for well-being, to bring those fundamentals of our human life to us, for each one of us. But even so, getting those as best we can, and we've all tried for quite a long time, in the end there's a question, is that all there is to it? Even if we have a painful history and we get some of it healed and some of it not, is that who we are? And will a person or, a lover or the things or whatever it is that we get, will that ever do it completely? Will you begin to study it with attention in the body? What is this wanting like? There's a contraction. Is it pleasant? Is it painful? Is it peaceful? Is it fulfilling or opening? So you begin to notice, if you pay attention, there are these sense experiences and the knowing of them with consciousness, and then all this wanting that comes. You begin to notice moments as these pleasant and neutral and unpleasant experiences keep changing, moments where we're not caught by wanting. Moments of silence where you're walking in the trees, in the redwoods, or working in your garden, or driving, or sitting by the side of someone you love, or watching the sunset, or playing with a child, or painting a painting, or writing something that matters to you, or cooking. The moments where you just are where you are. And what does that feel like? To be in the present, in the reality of the present as it is. And what supports that? And maybe even more deeply, who are you when you don't want anything? The kind of mystery of this life. Who are you when you're not defined by wanting? When you're hungry, what you see is restaurants. You don't see much else. So desire blinds us. But what if you just walk down the street to walk down the street? Completely amazing. And we do it. The heart opens. It's like the Buddha walking down the street saying, yes, this step and this one, the sights and the people going by. Buddhas rest in awareness. They rest in this well-being that is our true nature. And in each moment of presence and mindfulness, we discover there's a truth that is greater than this wanting. Imagine, sense for a moment, the beauty of meeting people meeting someone new, those moments where you don't want anything from them. You don't want them to admire you or like you or not go away or give you something, all those kind of wants. You just meet them as they are. How beautiful that is. And so as we discover this other possibility, there comes clarity, ease, a receptivity, a compassion. When we touch this wanting itself with our heart, with compassion, it's not to push it away or judge it or try to get rid of it, but just know it for what it is and feel the space between it and around it. There arises an awareness, a knowledge of not wanting, of the moments of contentment and compassion and abundance and a great kind of dignity. It's beautiful. It's the same with the other roots as one studies them or can. Aggression and anger, for example. And all the anxiety and pain that comes from the fear pushing the world away. The attempts to control the world, which we do through aggression and anger, as if we could. James Baldwin wrote, "I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense that once hate is gone, they will be forced to face a great deal of pain." So underneath our fear and aggression is this pain that we don't want to feel, the sorrows of life. And we have all these attempts and strategies to control and contract and defend and get rid of. And again, with awareness, this is the key to the training in this psychology. We can begin to study our fearful being, the critical mind, and notice that in itself it's painful, that fear is painful, critical is painful, aversion is painful. And then to look at how it is that we touch the sorrows of life. Just as in the greed, we notice, how do we touch the longing? Do we do it with compassion, openness? How do we touch the sorrows? And if we pay attention, we'll notice that we become reactive, afraid, angry, need support, when we are identified with our weakness, this weak body, this small story, this small sense of ourself. When there's an absence of mercy and kindness and forgiveness in our attention. And because we feel insecure with the sights and sounds and smells and things around us, then we seek strength and power over it, trying to be in control. We don't realize that what we seek is already here. The earth, which gave us birth, the sky, which gives us the air that we breathe, the waters of the rains that we drink and make up most of our body, the food that's given. There's this incredible gratitude that can come when we realize that almost everything that life needs is just given to us for free. The whole world lives in a safeguarding. Fish inside waves, birds in the sky, the elephant, the wolf, the lion as he hunts, the dragon, the ant, the wading snake, even the ground, the air, the water, every spark floating up from the fire, all exist, are held in the divine. Nothing is ever alone for a single moment. Something holds us, this life, what is sacred. It gave us birth. What are we so afraid of? So we look for all these strategies, fight, try and make things different. But there's a deeper strength which we can discover. And that is the strength to let go, to love, to trust, to open. The strength of forgiveness. It's a shift in the heart from hatred or fear to non-hatred, to compassion. Because actually every moment has what? That is seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting, bodily and mental perceptions. Doesn't really change, does it? I mean, the content changes, but it's the same 6 things. You want a different kind of experience? It's not what happens. And when we settle back with this attention and this presence, it's as if we let go of all the things that are bound in time and enter that which is timeless, the eternal present, our own Buddha nature. As Thomas Traherne wrote, "You never enjoy the world aright till the sea itself flows in your veins, till you are clothed with the heavens and crowned with the stars, and perceive yourself to be the air of the whole world, till your spirit fills the world and the stars are your jewels, until you are as familiar with the sacred as with your walk and table, till you are intimately acquainted with that shady nothing out of which the world was made, till you love others so as to desire their happiness, with a thirst equal to the zeal of your own. You never enjoy the world aright till you see all things in it so perfectly yours that you cannot desire them any other way." So there is a shift somehow that we can see very directly, moment to moment, between the body of fear and the opening to our Buddha nature. The release of the grasping and confusion to this possibility of sacred presence. And out of it comes this wonderful quality of strength, happiness, joy. The other way, from this perspective, hardly makes any sense. Little things. This is from the Christian Desert Fathers. There were 2 elders living together in a cell, and they never had so much as one quarrel with one another. One therefore said to the other, "Come on, let us have at least one quarrel like the others." And the second said, "I don't know how to start a quarrel." The first said, "I will take this brick and place it here between us, and then I will say it is mine. And after that you will say it is mine." This is what leads to dispute and a fight. So then they placed the brick between them, and one said, "It is mine," and the other replied to the first, "I do believe it is mine." And the first one said again, "It is not yours, it is mine." And so the other answered, "Well then, if it is yours, take it." And thus they could not manage after all to get into a single quarrel. I mean, what to quarrel about in the end? All these things we're fussing about, and then with the people that we're around and work with, and then in a moment, if that person said to you, "You know, I'll never see you again," which will happen one day, or "I might die in an accident," all of a sudden, all that would drop away. How can you quarrel when you really know that it's just like this for a moment? So there comes another possibility, a freedom of being. You see, there is in every human being, as our true nature, this boundless capacity to face the truth of this world, its joys and its sorrows, its beauty and its pain. And this is what can be awakened in this practice of awareness. We release from grasping and aversion and fear, and finally from delusion. We awaken from sleepwalk. You know how you do it on automatic pilot a lot? And the delusion of separateness and the fear of confusion when we don't face life directly. And enter the joy of just being moment by moment alive. Gil, who teaches here, Gil Fronsdal, said when he was 21, he was traveling in Morocco. And he was traveling across the Sahara and came to this oasis far out in the desert with his companion. And there the Bedouins who lived invited them to stay with them for several days. And every night they unrolled carpets and brought out feasts. And he said at first it felt like they were treated as visiting royalty, as kings. They beautiful food and music and everything for these guests. It was before they'd had many Americans. He said we were treated like kings. And then at the end of the 3 days, he realized, no, that they as visitors were not the kings. It was the Bedouins who were the kings. Because the real kingly quality was to be able to receive whoever comes with that kind of generosity, or the queen. We begin to notice that there are these 3 unskillful strategies: grasping and aversion and confusion. And in a moment, seeing that, we can let go into openness, into a moment of loving kindness, into a moment of clarity, the trusting heart that we can trust. This is a shift of identity from the small self to open to everything and nothing, which turn out to be the same thing. Being nothing, we are everything. It's not like you have to study Buddhist psychology for a lifetime and go into a monastery and take ordination and do all these special practices. I mean, that might be fun and you might learn some wonderful things from it. But it's always here. In a moment we can open. In a moment we can trust. In a moment we can release. And the heart can be free. Just this moment and this. So this psychology points to our direct experience in this moment. My teacher Ajahn Chah put it this way. He said, the original nature of your own heart and mind shines like pure, clear, luminous water, the sweetest taste. We might take refuge in the Buddha, he says, the Dharma, the teachings, the Sangha. But what is this Buddha? When we see with the eyes of wisdom, we know that the Buddha is timeless, unborn, unrelated to any body, any history, any image. Buddha is the ground of all being, the realization of the truth of the unmoving mind. So the Buddha was not enlightened in India. In fact, he was never enlightened, was never born, and never died. This timeless Buddha is our true home, our abiding place. When we take refuge in the Buddha, all things in the world are free for us. They arise and pass as they will and become our teachers, proclaiming the one true nature of life. There's an ease, a well-being. The Tao puts it this way: spring comes and the grass grows of itself. The breath breathes itself, and appearances come and we experience and work and love and do what we can. The more we grasp, the more trouble. The more openness with these very things, the greater freedom. The more we resist and fear and run away, the more trouble. The more we love and open, the happier it becomes. In this changing world, we can rest in the wise heart of a Buddha. A closing poem from Bertolt Brecht for you. We are traveling with tremendous speed toward a star in the Milky Way. A great repose is on the earth. My heart's a little fast, otherwise everything's fine.